everyone, welcome back to a long overdue episode of Blue versus Blue. I'm Zach, that's Joe, and I think we wanna talk about what Blue versus Blue is all about. So this is going to be a two-part segment. You'll see this episode go up on YouTube probably this weekend, but we're going to talk about our two clubs, obviously. Blue versus Blue. But we're going to talk about the current state of the clubs, and then the second part of the episode is the future state of the clubs. And so what we'll talk about is obviously, currently we all know that Manchester City rules the Premier League and whatnot. Not the Champions League though, but
no, not that.
We'll get to that.
That's neither here nor there.
But in these two episodes, we'll tie in, managers, we'll tie in academies, we'll tie in the front office and things like that. So hopefully this will give you a kind of an inside view on where we think our clubs currently stand and how they're shaping up, as well as what we see for the future and where we will go from here. So without further ado, Joe, it's good to see you, buddy.
Back at you, man. It's nice to focus a little bit on our clubs a little bit more. When we're on our stoppage time show, we try to cover what's going on around the world of soccer. But with this, we give us an opportunity to kind of brag on our teams a little bit and just talk friend to friend about what we see in our clubs and spend a little bit more time directly talking about what's going on with Manchester and Chelsea. So
yeah, and I think that this is what we always kind of dreamed of is being able to talk about the things that we love and talk about the things that we love in depth. So like I said just a little bit ago, it's no secret that Man City has that dominant run in the Premier League right now. I think, what is it? Will this be 7 out of 10?
I think 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Regardless,
4 out of the last 5.
Stupid number.
Yeah.
And I know that Big Shot on one of our shows had said that other than a few, I think it's City, Chelsea, and United have won all but
majority
maybe
of them.
A handful of the Premier League titles since its inception in 1990.
With a little bit of Liverpool and Arsenal mixed in, and then the occasional outlier of Leicester. So,
speaking of which, I don't know if you heard this or not, but you know who's coming back, right? It is now going to be the Barclays Premier League.
Oh, for real? Really?
Yeah. They reached a deal. So we'll get the glory days and the Lion and the Barclays Lion. So
that's fantastic.
I saw that probably about a month ago, and I meant to throw it in the chat and but it's good stuff.
Back to the Barclays.
Yeah. Yep. I feel like that's maybe it's just me being nostalgic, but I feel like that's been the best time for the Premier League. And no, that doesn't, not because that was when, we had more success, but I don't know. There's just something about it. Like when I think of the Premier League, I always think of Barclays.
Mm-hmm. I still occasionally, when I'm talking to my other friends that are into soccer, I'll still call it the Barclays Premier League on occasion.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's ingrained a little bit.
The BPL?
So. Yeah, exactly.
The what?
Barclays.
What's the BPL?
What's the BPL?
Man,
what's that?
You know what I mean.
You know exactly what I'm talking
about. EPL just doesn't sound right.
No, English Premier League. No. Barclays sounds a lot better.
Give me the BPL. Anyway, we're getting off on a tangent here.
That's all right.
Joe, what has been obviously we know the answer is Pep Guardiola here, but other than Pep Guardiola, what's the reasoning for City's dominance? What is it about Manchester City, other than the money and other than Pep Guardiola? What is it about City that makes them who they are?
First of all, they've made since Pep has come in, he and Tiki, who's our head executive in charge, they have a really great working relationship going back to when they were both at Barcelona. And since Pep has taken over, they have just made the right purchases when it comes to players. Few of them have been misses. Before then, they had a lot of mid signings in the 30, 40, 50 range. And a lot of them just didn't work out. Mangala, Otamendi was good for a little bit, but not too great. Jovetic, there was a lot of guys that were not so great signings. But I would say the biggest thing now is the front office and the structure that they have built from the top on down. Even without Pep, before that, the culture there was great. The leadership from the players that were there for an extended period of time kind of set the tone for how the team was expected to carry themselves on and off the field. And Pep really just took it to another level when it comes to the culture and the way that they do things. It just seems like the way they handle their business, the way they structured the organization and the team and the club is all the right and doing things the right way. So starting off with the front office and the people who work behind the scenes to making the right decisions and bringing in the right types of players, and then also making the big push to bring in Pep 5 years ago now, getting him away from Bayern. And it was no secret when he was at Bayern that City was extremely interested in him and bringing him to Manchester. So hiring the right people in the front office to eventually get themselves into the best position to get Pep, I guess, would be a good starting point. But then the players and the way they seem to fit really well with the system that Pep has brought in. You would think that with him, it's all about the attacking football, maintaining possession, trying to score as many goals as possible and keeping the ball from the other team, but just doesn't, I guess, get as much notification from or notoriety from others is how hard they work off of the ball and to win the ball higher up the pitch and in good positions to keep the ball in the opposing team's half. So hard work from the front office, finding the right players, coaching staff, creating an awesome environment, and having the right leaders in place. So having guys to set the foundation in Vinny Kompany and David Silva and Sergio Aguero to kind of lay the groundwork for when guys like Fernandinho and Kevin De Bruyne and Ilkay Gundogan have kind of taken over as the main locker room guys, along with Ruben Diaz since he's been here. But so laying the foundation.
Well, speaking of foundation, one thing that's always set me apart when it comes to what City has built is they arguably let the best midfielder in the Premier League go when Pep came in, because he didn't buy in. He didn't buy in. Sorry for those that aren't aware of who I'm talking about. Yaya Toure was arguably the best midfielder in the Premier League for a good stretch. He did it all. He scored goals. He assists. He was an excellent holding midfielder if you needed him to be. And the dude he's a tank. He's huge. And free kicks, it did not matter. Yaya Toure did it all. Severely underrated in my opinion. However, it became very clear that when City hired Pep, that Yaya was not about to change the way Yaya'd. And
that's a good description.
I mean, and it obviously he lasted 2 seasons, right? I think he lasted 2 seasons before City were like, okay, it's time for us to part ways. And I can't remember if they released him or if they transfer, if he found a transfer or
I think his contract was just about to run out, and they just decided not to extend, and both parties had decided that it was time. move.
And that's probably true, but for me, like, when you're willing to let someone go like that, who's arguably the best at what he does, that tells me that not only do the front office buy into it, but the players are buying into the idea, the identity. And that's one thing that I struggle with as a Chelsea fan, is that as successful as we are, and by all means, other than this run from City, Chelsea is a ridiculously successful club, especially recently. We do so without an identity, and we continue to do so, and that's the thing that's frustrating for me. So it's nice to see that on the other end, and see that in Manchester, and I think that that's what clubs are trying to strive towards. The problem is getting everyone on the same page, and unfortunately, I think it takes a manager like a Pep Guardiola to do so, followed by a front office that is like, you know what? You obviously know more than we do. Let's buy into yours. That's why we hired you. And that's why, Pep will go down as one of, if not, the greatest managers of all time.
Identity is a great word. So that's kind of what I was dancing around and not verbalizing, was the identity that has been created at the Etihad and throughout the academy from the top on down. Everybody is on board with the same vision and mission that has been kind of laid out. It's
crystal clear. There's no debating. The identity is clear at City. I did see, just to get a little jab in at Pep. I thought it was Eto'o, who said it, Samuel Eto'o. He said I saw it yesterday because it was Jose Mourinho's birthday, and it was
I know where you're going.
Eto'o, and it says that you can't compare Jose Mourinho to Pep Guardiola because Pep Guardiola won the Champions League while at Bayern, but he hasn't done it anywhere else, whereas Jose did it while he was at Porto. And it did. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, is there some validity here? But that's also like, that's like blaming Tom Brady, or blaming Bill Belichick because he had Tom Brady. Like, that's not fair. Mm-hmm. Yes, Jose may have done it with a less superior team, but that doesn't negate what Pep has done. Pep's just been really blessed with the teams that he's been able to manage.
When you start off with Barcelona and do so well with them and have the mind that he does for soccer, and then when Barca is your first big gig and you're really successful, you're not going to take a step down with it. So it's either going to be it's going to be a lateral move wherever you're going. So you go over to Bayern and work in Germany, dominated that league, but still couldn't get over the hump in the Champions League. I mean, it's not like they did poorly. It's not like they went out early. They were out, I think, in the semifinals every time.
Right.
So they were still one of the top four teams. And then from there, you go to the Etihad, where you have essentially full control over whatever you want to do. You get to pick the players, you get to set the academy up how you want it, whatever you want to do. Plus, get a pretty nice paycheck too.
Right.
You can't. So I mean, he's certainly earned the rights to be at the club that he's been at because of his success and his man management skills. And that's the thing. I think I was watching one of the City documentaries on Vincent Kompany, and one thing I think he mentioned was there's some managers are great at being tactically, they're great. They know the X's and O's. Then there are some that are great at man management skills and can work a locker room and get the most out of their guys. but Pep's one of the few that is great at both. Because usually, if you're tactically great, you might not be so good with people, and vice versa. So,
and while he's not on that same level, and I would not even begin to compare him to that, I truthfully believe that Thomas Tuchel is very much similar in that aspect. It is, if you pass the current Lukaku issue aside, he's gotten the best out of players by far. I mean, he's brought players that were in their graves back to resurgence. He's made Jorginho. He turned Jorginho into a Team of the Year player. I mean, because Jorginho was being phased out by Lampard. And, he brought back Tony Rudiger, who's now set for a massive payday. Cesar Azpilicueta was being phased out, and so...
Was he playing center back for you guys before Thomas?
No.
So tactically coming up with a new system that fit what his players did best and to get the most out of them was definitely the right call, obviously. And when we're talking head-to-head matchups last year, for sure we could not figure out how to attack your guys' defensive setup. That's what got you guys the wins. I mean, they were all 1-goal games, so they were all close. But that back line, they couldn't, without a designated striker, bigger striker that we've been on the hunt for, the false nine, your guys' system matches up great with that, because when you have that kind of free-flowing attacker, when it was either Phil or Kevin or Bernardo Silva or whoever, they're trying to drag in a typical back four, you're trying to drag one of the center backs out of position to create openings from your wingers to run into. And when you guys would pull Rudiger up or whoever to come man mark Kevin or Phil, you still got two more center backs back there waiting, and then there's just no lanes. So that kind of shut down. That was a big thing.
Closes passing lanes.
Exactly. That was a big reason why City struggled so much with Chelsea last year. So
it's interesting. I saw a stat that Pep Guardiola and I think it was Jurgen Klopp. I don't know if I know it was Pep for sure. Pep had never lost 3 games to a single manager in a single year ever before in his life, ever, until last year and Thomas Tuchel, which is absurd to me. Like to be able to get the best of one of the greatest managers ever 3 times in a row, like, and that's
across 3 different competitions too.
Yep.
That's what it wasn't even like 2 in the Premier League and then like a random FA Cup. It was semi-final FA Cup in the heat of a title chase in the Premier League and the granddaddy of them all,
Champions League final.
So
and I know that some believe he is not any good and not over his head, quote unquote. But he might, if the patience is allowed, he could be the greatest manager under Roman Abramovich's era. And I ironically, I looked up something because I was curious. Do you know who the longest tenured manager under Roman Abramovich is?
It's an excellent question because it's been like a 2, sometimes maybe 3-year cycle for most managers, if not less than that. So I do not. Hit me with the answer.
So the top 2 answers are the same. It's Jose Mourinho. His first spell and his second spell. His first time, he lasted 185 matches, 3 years, 3 months. All right.
So that's the longest tenured manager since Roman has taken over, is 3 years and a couple months.
3 years and 3 months, which is absurd.
Yeah.
His second spell was 136 games, 2 years and 6 months.
But Thomas is going to be coming up here pretty soon on that list.
Thomas is already, I don't know how many games he's managed yet, But Thomas is already 1, 2, 3, 4. If he's not fifth, he is sixth in all-time managers.
And this is about, I think the anniversary of when he took over was like the last, like within the past week. So it's only been like a year in charge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now let's think about that for a second. Like, that's the longest period has been 3 years for a manager, and you guys have still won so many trophies across all the different competitions that you've been involved in. And so that's what's most impressive for me as an outsider, as a Man City supporter looking at Chelsea, is the fact that you've been able to maintain an elite level of success with managerial changes. That is very rare to have that kind of thing happen across all sports, baseball, football, and basketball. You don't see clubs winning a lot of titles when changing managers or coaches that often. So
yeah, it's and that's kind of what I was talking about. Like, Chelsea doesn't have that identity because they don't have a manager long enough to build an identity. And that's what's frustrating, is that, like, you can't be expected to have an identity if there's nothing there to build around.
Continuity is not there to build something long term. And you guys have still had a pretty strong academy as well throughout the course of all that, even though there's been a different manager in charge with different styles of play and different tactical approaches. Still have pumping out quality young talent that are getting sold and or loaned out, that are playing in a lot of the top leagues across Europe.
He is at, that's not what I wanted. He's at 37 matches this year through all competitions. Let's see. He's at 67 matches.
Okay.
So he is currently sixth in managerial's listings of longest tenured at 67 matches. He's going to pass Frank next, then Antonio Conte, then Carlo Ancelotti, current Real Madrid, and then Jose if he gets there.
Right.
And in that time, he's won the Champions League, the Super Cup. He's got the Pro World Cup, the Club World Cup coming up. He could win that. And he's still in both the FA Cup and the EFL Cup this year. So in the span of 2 years, he could plausibly win 5 trophies in 2 years.
That's saying something.
That's impressive, okay? And that
doesn't seem like a manager that's over their head to me.
I'd be hard pressed to find someone who has as much success as that in a 2 year span. All while doing so with players that he didn't purchase.
Yeah, there's very few on your roster that are Thomas's guys.
There was actually, I saw someone had posted this. I'd like to say I took credit for it. But there is players on our roster who have been purchased by, I want to say, 9 different managers.
Jeez.
So we have players on this roster who have 9 different, I think it's like 9, maybe it's 6. Regardless, it's a lot.
It's a lot of different managers they played under.
Like, you can't form an identity when you have no continuity there. You wonder why Mourinho was successful is he had time to actually filter out the players that he didn't need or didn't want, didn't fit what he wanted, and brought in players that he could. And so that's we'll dive into that more because that's going to be a big talking point for me in the future of Chelsea's club. But I think that's at least from my perspective, that's where we're lacking now. We don't have an identity. We are literally a group of guys that is like you're going to play in like a guest tournament, and you like, I want all of my best friends who are really good at the game to come. We've never played together, but we're all talented enough that we can make things competitive.
Right.
And we have a good shot at winning, even though, we don't have the chemistry of playing together like, City's guys have. And
the core of the roster that we have, the key players have all been here for 3 or 4 years, almost the entirety of Pep's time. And some of them, like Fernandinho, have been here since before then. So that's what's been great, is that the spine of the team pretty much has all been here for a long time, and they know who's going to go where, who's doing what.
Because I did a little bit of research on you guys too. Ooh. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you only have 2 players on your roster right now that were not signed by Pep.
I think it's Kevin and Kevin. I think Kevin's the other one because he was bought when Pellegrini was our coach right before Pep came. So
that's absurd.
And not many going out. That's the thing. Like a lot of, once you're here because they do a great job of re-signing and making a priority to get their guys contract extensions before like that 2-year mark hits, and identifying guys that they want to keep long term and making sure that they get what they want and what works for the club. So,
and again, this plays into the frustration that I have, is that Chelsea can't create anything like that because they don't have a manager in long enough to get the best out of players to see, okay, well, this is the kind of player that we want to keep and offer an extension. It's easy to do it with guys with like Mason, and Reece, because they're young, they're already stars. Okay, you sign them to a long-term contract after they've proven that they belong at this level.
They've come up through your academy, so they're Chelsea kids through and through.
Right.
They're not like guys you just purchased recently.
Right. And even, but on the flip side, like, we'll take Andreas Christensen. He's technically a Chelsea Academy product, but he's gone through so many different managers in and out of the first team. Like, as much as I want to hate the guy because of the shit he's pulling this year with, I'm ready to sign my contract and I'm not. Okay, well, I'm ready this time. And now I'm not. And now he's leaving, supposedly. Like, I kind of get it to a degree. Like, the dude wants some consistency. Now, I don't think he's going to find that at Barca if that's where he's heading. I know that apparently Nagelsmann is pretty fond of him, is pretty fond of him, and with them losing Sule, he could be a like-for-like replacement at Bayern. But with that being said, you're going to leave Chelsea where you're not starting to go to Bayern where you're not going to start. Like, that's the thing that I struggle with some of these players. They want to, quote unquote, test free agency, but you go into the same position that you're already in. Now, okay, maybe you want to experience something new. You want to try your hand at something different. I get that. Totally get that. But I've said it numerous times, and I will stand by it. The grass isn't always greener. Just because you can leave and you think you should leave, don't be upset when it doesn't go your way.
Right. And now, as a fan, you don't begrudge a guy who wants to experience a new culture, or like for me, for Ferran Torres, like there are some City fans in my supporters group that were like dogging the kid. I'm like, he wanted to go home. He wanted to go back to Spain and play. As a 21-year-old, you grew up on Barcelona. So for a 21-year-old guy who was homesick and preferred Spain and wanted to go play for the club that he always dreamed of playing for as a boy, like I could never ever be upset with a kid for that. Like, that's where you want to be. Cool.
Is he a La Masia product?
He was not, but as a young Spanish striker, winger, that's where you always wanted to play.
Yeah. And it's the same with Azpilicueta, you know. Rumor is he's going to leave Chelsea at the end of this season, ending a 12-year career, to go back and play at Barcelona back in Spain. You know, he wants to finish his career in Spain. And truthfully, Chelsea are not going to give him more than a 1-year contract with a possibility of an option. Rumor has it Barcelona is willing to give him a 3-year deal. Well, good for them. But you know, like I don't fault the man for wanting to do what's best for him.
Right. That's a big one. They are human. They're human beings. Like, it's not just about, for a lot of them, it's not necessarily about the money. It's not about, there's a lot of other factors that go into it. Family life. Fernandinho keeps signing a deal here because his wife and his kids love where they live and don't want to move and go someplace else. So, like, his kids have English accents. Fernandinho, who's a Brazilian, has kids who have English accents. They're like true Mancunians. So